This poem is for Josh, where'd Josh go? Oh, he's standing next to the lion, and that's why it's for him. This is called New Dress Shirt. The first time I wear my new dress shirt, the woman at the bank tells me how well it fits on my torso, how it lights up my eyes, that my eyes can light a dark room, make night into day, etc. I decide I will never take off my new dress shirt. It is the beginning of a new life for me, a life of being noticed, of reaping reward. With my new dress shirt on, I will run for mayor, uncontested. I will marry the woman at the bank, perhaps after saving her from a vicious attack by a desperate man-eating lion. But when it happens at the bank, when the lion crashes through the drive-through teller window, my new dress shirt hugging my torso perfectly, I stand paralyzed while the new love of my life is torn apart and eaten, a shredded pantsuit hanging like a bath towel from the lion's blood-stained incisors, bloody deposit slips pasted to the lion's wet paws. I am almost certain I see that lion look at my new dress shirt, at how well it fits. Have you guys ever bought a shirt before? You have? All right, 2 of you. I bought this shirt today. I bought this shirt at the Spider. I don't know if, does anybody know where I bought this shirt? Any guesses? When you're on tour for a long time, it's hard to do your laundry. And maybe it's just easier sometimes to buy new shirts. Matthias, do you want to show them your shirt that you bought? Instead of doing laundry, we just make good choices. This is called Refrigerator General. I am wrapped only in a wet towel when the Refrigerator General knocks on my door. I need to inspect your refrigerator, he says. You can't just go around inspecting people's refrigerators, I say. The cold air from the door on my flushed thighs. But ma'am, I'm the Refrigerator General, he says. Well, may I see your identification, I ask. The Refrigerator General digs around in his breast pocket and pulls out a card designed to look a little like a refrigerator. That's very clever, but I'm not sure it proves anything, I say. Ma'am, he says with urgency. He pushes open the door a little and steps inside. But I'm in my towel, I say. Relax, ma'am. I'm a professional, he says from the kitchen. But I don't even have a refrigerator, I say. Just as I suspected, he says. I stand completely motionless in the corner of the kitchen and start humming. He stops writing his citation and stares at me. Eyes like a bat's eyes. Ma'am, he asks. Ma'am? The blood draining from his face, he tugs gently on my towel and looks inside. I can see it in his eyes, how he wants me to be something human. All right, I'll do 2 more from this thing. All right, this poem is called Building of Unseen Cats. I live in Portland, and this is about the truest poem. This is set in Portland in my old apartment building that caught on fire. And this is pretty much a true story of what happened. Everything is true except for the part where I save a bunch of babies. There were none to be saved. It's not as if I left them. They weren't there. Building of unseen cats. This is for Matthias's shirt. When I woke up, it was the middle of the night and my building was on fire. The hallway was not filled with smoke, and then quickly it was. I rescued a few older men from their bathtubs, a few babies from their cribs. Outside, the air was filled with hair. Everyone but me was holding a plastic cage with a cat in it. We weren't supposed to have cats in my building, but there they all were, an invisible nation suddenly uncurtained into a blinding and brutal world. Everyone looked at me with a face that said, "Let's never speak of this. Let's not look directly at what is meant to be loved in secret. Let's, for example, imagine the sea is always, constantly, and forever spilling toward us, that our screaming building is something worth escaping." What I did with the rock. I was alone on the beach when I picked up a rock. I gave it a name, and then I stood at the water with the rock in my hand. I gave it your name. It felt right, warm and cold at the same time, but I threw it as far as I could and never saw it splash. "What have I done?" I asked. I stood there waiting for the rock to wash up. About 14,000 days later, I died. This is a poem called "The Blood Sport." As though being a mother, one could still be anything, less than flesh and blood, a next of kin, and rightly appalled, I told you my children were nowhere, for all I care, that I succeed only insofar as I fail. That Sunday, because they were taken early somewhere, I rose to a racket in the garden. On the lawn, a magpie was pecking at a nestling, a flight lesson, I thought, the nestling none too keen. When again, at the frantic cheep cheep, I returned, I saw how the bird was dropped and attacked and then dropped. Always at my approach, the assailant would flee, clutching the little parcel as though it were its mother. In noonday, when you pried it loose from the ground and your father said to give it milk from a drinking straw, it looked the other way and shuddered. So young and unknown it could be anything. For 2 days, nothing more certain beyond the one pierced eye bedding down on the rabbit hutch. Another day, and like any boy coming from school for a bit of mothering, you cried, kicking over the egg cup of milk. The ants have got him. So they had. Drawn by the blood and milk, the ants had moved in to do their bit of fostering, and all the corruption thereof, without growing faint or necessarily fonder at sight, in that citadel, making over to God the God-forsaken, even as the magpie earlier had mistaken him for a mouse because he wouldn't fly, a behavior sometimes understandable in magpies. So said the old person next door, who isn't anyone's father. The world and its blood fostering, mothers who take themselves for mothers as if anyone is ever equal to the task. Sentient, you raged at the ants, the maggots, these that did their part. Son, it's your first garden. Forgive us. So that's not my poem. That's a poem written by a poet named Wang Mei, and this is a book that just came out very recently from a press called Octopus Books. Has anybody ever heard of that press? It's like top 5 of mine. Top 3 of mine, yeah. He knows what my top 3 are. So this came out most recently with us, and It's her fourth book of poems, but it's her first book since I've been alive. It's her first book since 1977, when her third book came out. She's a poet who I discovered very late in her career after she had stopped publishing for many years in 2003. And it took me about 5 or 6 years to even find her, to figure out where she was. And because nobody really knew of her, she's kind of stopped publishing and stopped being public altogether. Turns out, I discovered 5 or 6 years after that, in 2009, that she had moved to Dublin, changed her name, stopped publishing, became a painter, and where she still lives now. And she told me, after about several years of conversation, you know, kind of talking about her poetry, I was reluctant to ask her if I could publish it right away anyway, but she showed me about 800 pages, typewriter-written pages of the poetry she had been writing in the last 37 years. And 4 years later, this book now exists. So I hope you'll check it out. If you don't buy it or check it out, at least tell a friend, and I'm gonna try to get her in the conversation again, get people talking about her again. All right, and this book just came out recently too. This is a book that I did write. It's called The Book of Joshua, and it's a long narrative piece, so it's a little hard to excerpt from. I think the best way to show you kind of where the narrative might go is to maybe just read 5 or 6 of these short little poems, and then I'll be done. So I'm going to start in the first poem that is named 1977. The next, any guesses what the next poem is called?
77.
Yeah, not 76, but 78. I go forward in time in this book. And the first 2 sections of the first 2 sections of the 3 sections are 1977 to 2044. And then the third section is something you can figure out on your own. So we're going to go forward in time. If you're curious about any year, shout it out. As long as it's chronological, I'll read it for you. And maybe then I'll read you the year where he dies. Oh, he dies, by the way. At the end of his life. Spoiler! You will too. You will all die at the end of your lives. 1977. In the beginning, no one was around. No one made my bed, and no one left any tools, and no one taught me how to swim or how to get back to sleep when I woke up, and no one rocked me to sleep, and no one told me the plan. No one told me what to do with my legs. No one told me how to open my hands. The birds waited quietly in the tree. My fingers unfolded on their own like tiny blue swans.
'87.
1987. I wanted you to not be metal anymore. I wanted to hug you around your real legs until they both fell off. I wanted you to laugh, and I wanted you to scissor my head with your soft and strong real legs. I wanted to worry that my head might fall off when you scissored it. I wanted to worry that I might die of breathlessness if I laughed too much harder. I wanted to feel like the 2 of us were sewn together. I wanted it to rain, and I wanted us to sink into the mud like horses. We're going at a slow pace now. 1988. The day you died, Joshua, we were playing a game called Family. We pretended our baby just died, and so we dug a grave. Your metal head was pretending to be sad when you fell into the grave we dug. Our heart veins snapped and filled the grave with blood. The woman was listening to the telephone. She looked tired. God turned her into a white boat floating on the blood. I'm going to read 98 for Riley because my old roommate from College of the Ozarks, my old college roommates here, and we knew each other in 1998, but we met each other in 1995. 96. Yeah, 95. 1998. I walked to the ocean and you weren't there, Joshua. There was no white boat like in the nightmare. I swam across the ocean, and when I came out on the other side, I saw a boy. Joshua? I said, it wasn't you. Are you my son? Asked the boy. I closed my eyes and was swimming again, but this time in the blood. When I came out on the other side of the blood, the boy was there again. Are you my father? He asked. I'm not old enough to be your father, I said, and I'm not young enough to be your son. All right, I'll do 2 more of these and then the last one. We should probably get into the future. We're going a little slow. 2041. All right, a lot of shit happens between that and 2041. We go to Mars, we give birth to our father. Now we're in 2041. Oh, he tried to kill himself, but all he had was a bow and arrow. So he had to shoot it up into the sky. And then it came back down and got him in the heart. But instead of dying, his heart exploded into a big flock of sheep. And then he was burdened, but then he had to be a shepherd. So this is how he dealt with it. The sheep were not washed down the river to their deaths. Instead, all the water in the river was absorbed by the sheep. The river became a giant wall of soft, bloody woolliness that trapped me forever on the night side of Mars. (2044). I woke up dangling from an umbilical cord that looked like a telephone cord, and there you were, Joshua, on the blood in a white boat, rocking. And then a bunch of weird stuff happens. All right, thank you very much.